Now, dyadic malnourishment, the malnourishment of these mother-child pairs, is one way to start to see issues of undernutrition and overnutrition, not as distinct, not as unrelated, but as potentially linked together. There are various forms of dyadic malnourishment. You can have, across the top I have mother, underweight, normal weight, overweight, child, underweight, normal weight, overweight. The dark greens are malnourished, where there's a malnourishment, but there's only one form of malnourishment in the dyad, either in one member of the dyad or both. And then the yellows are where there's a dual burden of malnourishment, where you have an overweight member of the family, an overweight member of the dyad, and an underweight member of the dyad. And then in the very middle here is healthy weight, or normal weight, normal weight. The prevalence of malnourished and nourished mother-child dyads in India in 2005-2006. This is using the National Family Health Survey. You'll see that 34 of these four categories, where you have underweight mother, underweight child, overweight mother, overweight child, overweight mother, underweight child, this is the dual burden, and healthy weight, slightly over a third are malnourished where both members are underweight. Slightly less than half are healthy weight in both members. And then for the dual burden, you've got about 11%. This percentage is actually growing, and in some states growing quite rapidly from the last National Family Health Survey until this most recent National Family Health Survey. So understanding the mother-child nutritional status. For the purpose of this study, I used a framework that accounts for proximate determinants, underlying factors from pregnancy, birth, and infancy, and household-level characteristics. Looked at things like the sex of the child, household wealth, the consumption of a non-veg diet. There is a long history of vegetarianism in India. And so I wanted to, and while I was there, there were discussions about vegetarianism that I came across in a number of different areas. So I wanted to make sure to include the consumption of a non-veg diet versus a vegetarian. Non-veg would be any meat and eggs. Vegetarian would be no meat or eggs. You could still have milk and dairy, but no egg. Underlying factors from birth and infancy, birth order, the months breastfed, as well as antenatal care, and that the mother was able to access antenatal care. And then household level characteristics. Religion, because I thought it would be interesting, and we're going to get to that in a minute, because I just thought it would be interesting. Didn't have any real research backing it up. I just thought it would be interesting, and wait till you see what happens. Urban rural, because the research had kind of said that that's where it was going to go. And parental education, both the mother as well as the mother's partner. Okay. The data from the India National Family Health Survey, 2005-2006, the same data we've seen in earlier parts of this presentation. Now, I looked at children who were between 13 and 59 months of age. And the reason I looked at that time period for this presentation is because of the significant downturn in nutritional status that we see between 6 and 12 months due to that weaning period that is so critical and where the children are so vulnerable. Kind of wanted to pull them out. They're in a different paper. But look at just children who are kind of past that. And the analysis focuses on three categories of malnourished dyads. The three that we've talked about, underweight, overweight, and overweight, underweight. This is the dual burden. I didn't include those other categories because they represented such small percentages in the population, it didn't make sense to include them in this analysis. This still gave me 19,017 dyads. Now, here's the regression. These are predictors of malnourishment in mother-child dyads. Was the dyad malnourished? Was the dyad not malnourished compared to healthy weight? You've got underweight, overweight. This is the dual burden in blue, and then overweight over here. What we see is that, and there's a couple slides that I think are going to show this a little better in a minute. what we're going to see is that variable that I threw in here, religion, because I thought it would be interesting, ends up being statistically significant across all three. Now let me just talk about what the general findings are, and then we're going to go back to that issue of religion and why the Fulbright was so important. So compared to normal weight diets, diets where there's the underweight mother with underweight child, household wealth is important. Mother's diet, child's diet is important. The number of months breastfed, antenatal care, religion, and both parents' education matter. For overweight mother with underweight child, you've got household wealth, birth order, religion, urban or rural residence. And finally, for the underweight mother with the, did I write that down wrong? Yeah, no, I've got, this should not be dual burden here. That should be over there, sorry. The underweight mother with the underweight child, household wealth, mother's diet, birth order, antenatal care, religion, and urban rural residence. Now, most of these are about what we would expect. What was interesting about the overweight mother, I have a typo here.
Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, the third one was probably
Overweight
and
mother.
underweight.
Yeah.
Overweight mother, underweight child.
I'm going to go back where there's not a typo. Okay. Okay. So most of these things were kind of as I expected, but there were some interesting things. Now, do note that my R-square is pretty small, and so there's a lot being explained in this underweight model, not nearly as much in the other two. A lot more research needs to be done. We're really still exploring a lot of these ideas. But wealth matters. But what's interesting here is that wealth seems to matter more in the middle for the dual burden. And so that's going to warrant further investigation. But for me, what's going to really warrant further investigation and why the Fulbright was important is this issue of religion. One of the things that I started to learn when I was in India, as I was talking to other moms, because being a researcher was great. I was the only woman there. I didn't get paid. No one paid any attention to me. They didn't know what I was. I mean, they really could not figure out what I was and what I wanted, and was I in school there? Was I trying to get a degree? Was I still a student? So I had good conversations with people, but I could tell they could not figure out what I was. But where people did figure out what I was when I went to my daughter's school, because they knew I was a mom. And so that role of mom allowed me kind of entree into these other women's lives. And I wouldn't have had that if I wasn't on a Fulbright. Sure, I wouldn't have had the academic experience talking to all the men at the university, but I wouldn't have had that experience of being at the daycare center, picking up my kid, talking to women, and finding out, oh, they're pregnant and now they can't eat something. And it's not because they don't want it, it's because their religion actually begins to shape their diet, and the religion shapes their diet during pregnancy in ways that differ from non-pregnant state. And so that Fulbright experience, that ability to live in the culture, to experience it on a day-to-day basis, helped me, well, I put this in because I thought it would be interesting, and now it's giving me more ideas about what I need to do when I go back to India to really begin to unpack the world of religion and diet in women's lives as we look at this mother-child diet. So, some conclusions. We'll skip the one where there's a typo. General conclusions from the analysis. More than half of all mother-child diets contained at least some form of malnourishment. That's pretty striking. And one of the things we know is that children, women, girl child, born malnourished, born low birth weight, and then who experiences malnourishment is at higher risk during their pregnancy later on. That these are not things that are isolated, that they go through, that are somehow able to separate from one or the other. And so you've got more than half the mother-child diets containing at least some form of malnourishment. Underweight is directly linked to household wealth. And as household wealth increases, the odds of an under dyad decreases. Overweight is an urban phenomenon. Underweight is a phenomenon primarily seen in children who follow vegetarian diets, and it's very common in mothers who follow vegetarian diets. Again, beginning to point to that, I need to go back and look at the link between religion and diet and kind of prenatal care and care of the child and how that all comes together. And finally, underlying factors seem to be significant in explaining the odds of an overweight mother with underweight children. And some more things. The dual burden of malnutrition is present at the national level and at the household level. The dual burden and overweight dyads are an urban phenomena. Household wealth is an important proximate determinant, but the relationship of wealth to dual burden is complex and needs to be further examined. That there needs to be more. It's not simply a matter of more food, more eating. Something else may be going on. We need to look at that. Otherwise, you would see it in the overweight in the same way. Religion is important across the three forms of dyadic malnourishment. And given that religion influences dietary practice and that dietary practice is itself important in two of the three types of households, we really need to focus more research in this area. And the relationship of underlying fertility-related issues, birth order, breastfeeding, and antenatal care are important, and they're going to warrant further research as well. They need to be kept in there in the model as we continue to explore these issues of religion and dietary practice. And finally, something fun. We went to, this was at a Fulbright orientation for Fulbrighters coming from India to the United States. And this is my little girl who loves Bollywood music and did not get off the stage. So she thought this was the best thing ever. So we'll have that picture up, and then I'll take any questions that you may have.